She ripped it off like it was a toy. My daughter screamed so hard her lips turned blue. I still hear it sometimes, that scream. Shrill, panicked, tiny. You'd think it was just a child afraid of the dark or a scraped knee or the usual 5-year-old drama. But no, this wasn't that. This was the sound of her failing heart trying to survive without the very thing keeping her alive. The thing that HOA Karen, the woman who lives 3 houses down with a perfect lawn and a soul as cold as her marble birdbath, ripped off my daughter's chest because she thought it was, and I quote, an unauthorized electronic device not allowed in the community pool, a heart monitor, a medical-grade wireless pediatric cardiac telemetry unit specifically designed to detect early signs of sudden cardiac arrest in children with congenital heart defects. Karen didn't ask. She didn't care. She just snatched it off, like it was a cell phone or a Fitbit. My daughter, Amelia, collapsed within seconds, gasping for air, clutching her chest, her tiny fingers flailing like she was underwater. And Karen? She just stood there, held the device in her hand like a prize she'd confiscated from a rule-breaking child. She didn't know. She couldn't have known. But I'm a district attorney, and every fiber of law in my body, every ounce of courtroom restraint I'd learned over 18 years, disappeared the moment I saw my daughter's eyes roll back. This story isn't about pettiness. It's not even about HOA policies gone too far. It's about what happens when a dangerous woman with too much power, too little empathy, and no understanding of what she's touching crosses the line. This isn't a cautionary tale. It's a reckoning. And it started on a warm afternoon in a pool built for families in a neighborhood ruled by one woman's delusions. My name is Claire Alden. I've spent the past 18 years prosecuting criminals, standing in front of judges, parsing through evidence, and delivering closing arguments so sharp they left jurors in silence. But I've never had to use those skills in my own neighborhood. Not until the summer of 2022. My daughter, Amelia, is 5 years old. Bright, beautiful, born with a heart that needed machines more than it needed luck. She's had 3 surgeries before her 5th birthday, one at just 8 days old. The doctors called her a miracle. I call her my world. Her condition is called pediatric dilated cardiomyopathy. Her heart muscles are too weak to pump blood efficiently. Every second of her life is monitored. She wears a chest-mounted wireless heart telemetry unit 24/7. It alerts us and her medical team if anything goes wrong, even the faintest irregularity in rhythm. We moved to Willow Creek Estates, a gated community outside of Charleston, thinking it would be safer, quieter, the kind of place where children ride bikes in cul-de-sacs and neighbors wave while trimming hedges. We were wrong. Mid-50s, recently divorced, blonde highlights with roots showing, wore pastel polos like she was stuck in a country club purgatory, HOA president for 4 consecutive years, despite no one actually voting. She ran unopposed because no one else could stomach the role. Karen was the kind of person who sent email reminders about approved flower species, who once wrote a warning letter because someone's 8-year-old drew sidewalk chalk on the common path. We tried to be polite at first. We baked cookies, invited her to Amelia's birthday party. She declined with a stiff smile and a note. Private pools are a better fit for medically sensitive children. Yes, she wrote that. At first, I thought she was just cold. Then I realized she was dangerous. Amelia's life wasn't like other kids. No robosin, no water balloon fights. She couldn't go too long without shade or hydration. Her cardiologist, Dr. Radhika Patel, worked with us to ensure Amelia could enjoy some level of normalcy, including swimming under careful supervision, wearing her monitor in a special, waterproof medical pouch. She called it her little robot friend. She even named it Zappy. Amelia knew her limits. She was smart, kind, a little cautious, but never scared. She was raised by a woman who fought in courtrooms and never lost. But even I couldn't prepare her for someone like Karen. The Willow Creek Community Pool was open only from May to September. Every family was issued a key fob. Pool rules were written on a big laminated board at the entrance. Most were reasonable. But then there was rule number 14. No electronic devices allowed in or around the pool for any reason. Karen created it herself. She told the HOA board it was to prevent distractions and enforce privacy. But we all knew the truth. She hated kids with tablets. She hated Bluetooth speakers. She hated anything that wasn't her idea of order. When I requested an exemption for Amelia, provided full documentation from MUSC Children's Hospital with medical recommendations and waterproof device certification, she ignored it. No reply. No acknowledgement. Just silence. Until the email blast went out. All families must comply with rule number 14. No exceptions granted to date. Please see me personally if you have concerns. I replied again. She replied with one word. Denied. That week, Karen began watching us. Not just in passing. She would stand outside her window when we passed by on walks. I once caught her taking photos of Amelia from across the street to report to the board. She claimed, I asked for security camera footage from the pool. She said no such footage was saved, too expensive. Then, one evening at a neighborhood meeting, Karen stood and said, we all want what's best for our children. But some people want special privileges that put others at risk. Her eyes never left mine. I clenched my fists under the table. Amelia wasn't a privilege. She was a person. And that monitor was her lifeline. I'm trained to stay calm. I've put murderers behind bars by keeping my composure. But with Karen, it wasn't about the law. It was about my child's dignity. I considered suing the HOA. But the bylaws were airtight, and most families just stayed quiet. They were afraid of Karen's influence. She knew how to weaponize technicalities, how to manipulate power. Still, I made a choice. I'd take Amelia to the pool. Quietly, discreetly, only when it was nearly empty. Because my daughter deserved a laugh. To splash, to feel normal. Even if it meant Karen would make us her next target. It was a Sunday. Cloudy skies. Most families had left early due to rain warnings. Amelia begged for a quick dip. She wore her red one-piece. I sealed Zappy into the waterproof pouch, secured it gently on her chest. She did a silly dance before jumping in. For 20 minutes, everything felt perfect. Then the gate creaked open, and Karen walked in. She wore white, clipboard in hand, eyes locked on us. Karen walked in like a judge entering her courtroom. Her clipboard was her gavel, her sunglasses a barrier to empathy. She didn't look left or right. She looked straight at Amelia, and then at me. I gave her a calm, polite nod, the kind you give to someone you want to keep things civil with, even if your insides are boiling. But she didn't nod back. She just marched toward the lifeguard station, whispered something. The lifeguard, a young college student named Tyler, looked over at us confused. He shook his head. Karen's face tightened. She turned and marched around the pool's edge, her sandals slapping against the wet concrete. When she reached the shallow end, where Amelia was gently paddling with her floaties, she crossed her arms. Excuse me, she barked. What is that on her chest? Amelia paused mid-paddle. It's my Zappy, she said innocently. Karen turned to me. You know electronic devices aren't allowed. Rule 14. I stood slowly. It's a medical device, Karen. You've already seen the paperwork. She scoffed. You mean the email you flooded the board with? That's not approval. That's you demanding exceptions. I tried to remain calm. We're not asking for exceptions. We're asking for compassion. Karen stepped closer to the pool, then compassionately remove the device and follow the rules. Or I will. I felt something rise inside me, a slow, searing anger. I had walked murderers into courtrooms. I had stared down men who beat their wives and left them for dead. But this woman, this self-appointed dictator, she was about to put my daughter's life at risk for a rule. Don't touch her, Karen. Karen reached into the water. Amelia backed away. Karen, I said more firmly now, I'm warning you. That's when she snapped. She stepped into the pool, fully clothed, and ripped the monitor off Amelia's chest with one hard yank. It happened so fast. Amelia let out a blood-curdling scream. Not a tantrum. Not fear. Pain. She collapsed into the water, face first, I dove in. Her body was limp when I pulled her out, lips already turning blue. The sudden adrenaline dump from fear and pain had triggered an arrhythmic event. I grabbed the emergency injector from my bag. We always carried it just in case, and administered the dose while calling 911 with my other hand. The lifeguard froze. Karen stood soaking wet, holding the heart monitor like it was a used tissue. She was faking it, she shouted. No kid needs that kind of monitor. This is a pool, not a hospital. I looked at her in disbelief. You nearly killed her. Karen smirked. Well, maybe you should teach her not to lie to authority. Authority? The word echoed. I stood up, my clothes dripping, my daughter wheezing behind me. I am the authority. The paramedics arrived within 4 minutes. Amelia was stabilized, rushed to MUSC Children's. I rode in the back. Her eyes opened briefly. Mama, hurts, she whispered. I kissed her forehead. I know, baby. I know. Meanwhile, Karen? She tried to leave the pool. But Tyler, the lifeguard, bless that kid, had recorded the whole thing on his phone. Without hesitation, he texted it to me, then handed it to the arriving officers. Karen was detained on site. The charges? Endangering the welfare of a child, interference with medical equipment, assault, trespassing in a restricted medical situation. We later proved Amelia had doctor-approved access under ADA guidelines. But that was just the beginning. The HOA message board lit up that night. Some neighbors defended Karen. She was just following the rules, one wrote. Another, we can't have special treatment for every medical case, but most were outraged. I saw it. She assaulted that child. I have a diabetic son. Should he be banned next? Is HOA power now above human decency? Screenshots of Karen soaked and shouting went viral on local Facebook groups. Within 24 hours, news vans lined up outside Willow Creek. I didn't speak to the press. Not yet. I was too busy staying by Amelia's side. This was personal, but it had to be strategic. As a district attorney, I knew my office couldn't prosecute it. Conflict of interest. So I submitted a formal referral to the state attorney general. But behind the scenes, I started building the case like any other. Witness statements from 5 parents at the pool Tyler's full video past HOA meeting recordings where Karen denied medical accommodations, her email rejecting our ADA, request a voicemail she accidentally left on my phone, mocking coddled children with fake illnesses. It was all there. This wasn't just negligence, it was malice. Then something unexpected surfaced. A former HOA board member, anonymous at first, emailed me with screenshots. Turns out, Karen had a history of filing HOA reports against families with special needs children. One family had an autistic son who liked to hum near the pond. She wrote him up for noise pollution. Another had a girl in a wheelchair. Karen said her ramp was not visually appealing. She had waged war on vulnerable children for years, and no one stopped her. Karen hired a high-profile defense attorney, one of those guys who appears on billboards. Their claim? This was a misunderstanding. My client believed she was protecting pool policy and believed the child's device posed a risk to others. Risk to others? The monitor weighed 3 ounces. It had never caused an alert in 6 months of swimming. They pushed for a settlement, a quiet dismissal. I declined. I wanted this public. Not for revenge, but so no child would ever feel unsafe in their own neighborhood again. The state picked up the case within a week. Karen Langley, HOA president and once queen of clipped hedges and community rulebooks, was now facing 3 felony counts and a firestorm of public outrage. But she didn't flinch. In fact, she doubled down. Through her lawyer, she released a statement. I acted in accordance with community safety policies. If certain parents choose not to comply, they bear the responsibility for what follows. What follows? That phrasing sent chills down my spine. This wasn't just legal defense, it was a veiled threat. A message to everyone who had ever dared to stand up to her. By now, our once idyllic Willow Creek estates was in full civil war. Lines were drawn. On one side, parents, teachers, anyone with a conscience. On the other, the rule-obsessed, mostly older residents, who viewed Karen as the last line of defense against decline. One neighbor, Mrs. Harkins, 82 years old, actually said to my face, "When we give exceptions to one, we open the door to chaos." I asked her, "So if your grandson needed a wheelchair ramp, would that be chaos too?" She didn't answer. Even as Amelia recovered, our mailbox was vandalized. Our recycling bin disappeared. Once, we found a dead bird on our porch. The police couldn't prove anything, but I didn't need proof. Karen's supporters had a name for us. They called us the ADA mob. The courtroom was packed on day one of the trial. Karen arrived in cream-colored slacks, her hair freshly done, wearing a pearl necklace, the kind you wear to brunch with friends, not a felony trial. She smiled at reporters, blew a kiss to someone in the back row. I sat quietly in the front row, beside Amelia, who wore a soft blue hoodie and held Zappy, her heart monitor, in her hands, not because she had to wear it anymore. The doctors upgraded her to a smaller patch, but because she wanted to. Karen glanced at her, then looked away. The prosecutor stood and didn't waste time. This case is about cruelty, about arrogance, about a woman who placed her obsession with rules above the life of a 5-year-old child. They presented the video. The entire courtroom watched Karen step into the water, rip the monitor, and Amelia fall limp. People gasped. A woman in the back cried. Karen looked unmoved. Karen's lawyer played a different game. They argued Karen had reasonable concern that the device was recording others, violating pool privacy. They even brought in a so-called technology expert who claimed some heart monitors could potentially be misused to capture data. It was desperate, but it rattled the court. So we countered. We brought in Dr. Patel, Amelia's cardiologist. She explained in vivid, heartfelt language that monitor is non-audio, non-visual, non-intrusive. Its sole function is to transmit cardiac rhythm data to a secure medical server. This device saves lives. It doesn't violate privacy. It protects it. Karen's lawyer tried to interrupt. Dr. Patel silenced him with one line. If Ms. Langley had even Googled the device, she would have known that. But she didn't care to. We thought that was it, until a former HOA board member, someone we hadn't contacted, came forward mid-trial. Her name was Miriam Snow. She was in her 70s, wheelchair-bound, and quiet, the kind of woman you wouldn't notice in a crowd. But when she rolled into the witness box, the room stilled. She raised a printed email in her trembling hands. An email from Karen. Certain residents are a liability. The more we let them stay, the more we risk litigation. Let's clean up the weak links. Miriam looked up. She was referring to me, and to Claire, and to Amelia. She didn't just hate children. She hated anyone who wasn't perfect. We entered the email into evidence, and that's when the jury's eyes changed. Karen wasn't a strict rule follower anymore. She was a bigot with a badge. Remember Tyler, the lifeguard? He took the stand next. He told the court he'd never seen a more calm child in that pool than Amelia, that she always followed rules, that Karen had whispered to him days before the incident, "Watch the Hart kid. She's trouble." He choked up on the stand. I was too scared to report her. She made me think I'd get fired. The jury deliberated only 6 hours. When they returned, Karen sat like stone. Guilty on all 3 felony counts. Unanimous. No emotion. No remorse. The judge ordered immediate sentencing. 12 years. She fainted before they read the final line. Paramedics had to wheel her out. Within days, HOA meetings exploded. A recall vote was held. Karen's allies were removed. A new board took over. Parents, veterans, educators. They rewrote the HOA charter to comply with ADA standards and require mandatory empathy training for board members. We called it Amelia's Clause. Karen's house was put on the market within months. No one in the neighborhood bought it. A tech company eventually turned it into a training facility. Poetic. The courtroom victory was supposed to be the end. 12 years behind bars. A public reckoning. An HOA system flipped on its head. But it wasn't the end. Not for me, and not for Amelia. Because after the trial came the whispers. People would nod and smile in the grocery store. But then I'd overhear them. She made the whole thing political. She used her position to ruin that woman's life. Don't mess with the district attorney. She'll bury you. It didn't matter that we'd won fairly, that we had evidence, testimony, witnesses. Some people didn't care about facts. They only saw a mother in power and assumed I abused it. And Amelia? She started having nightmares again. Not about Karen. Not even about the hospital. About people watching her, judging her, whispering things she didn't understand. That question broke me. Because, no, she wasn't the reason. Karen was. But when you're 5 years old, you don't understand nuance. You just feel the weight of attention. I had to do something. Not just for her, but for every parent who'd ever felt powerless against people like Karen, for every child told they were too much, too fragile, or a burden to the system. I took a leave from the DA's office. Unpaid. No press releases. No attention. I used the time to create something that had never existed in our state, the Neighborhood Justice Initiative, an educational and legal outreach project built to train HOAs, neighborhood boards, and local councils on ADA compliance, medical accommodation, law, the difference between liability and prejudice, and the most important, human empathy. I personally wrote the curriculum. I recruited lawyers, doctors, child psychologists, and ADA experts. We designed workshops, handbooks, online simulations, even role-play training. And we launched it for free. Within 3 months, 22 neighborhoods across the state signed up, then 70, then 130. One day during a board training seminar, I was reviewing slides when Amelia tapped my hand. Can I talk this time? She was 6 now, stronger, still small for her age, but taller in spirit. I handed her the mic. She said, "Hi, I'm Amelia." I had a heart monitor, but someone didn't like it. They took it off and I got really sick. But it wasn't my fault. It's okay to be different. Just don't be mean. That was all she said. No dramatic music, no rehearsed lines, just truth. And somehow, it reached further than all our paperwork ever had. The story resurfaced, but this time it was different. We weren't just the DA and her sick kid. We were something else now, a symbol. News, outlets picked up the story. Mother and daughter create nationwide HOA reform movement. We were invited to speak at community development summits, pediatric advocacy panels, even a televised town hall on ADA rights in suburban America. But we declined the media circus. We kept it local, real, grounded, because that's what made it work. From prison, Karen filed 2 appeals, both denied. Then she tried a different approach. She filed a civil defamation suit from jail, claiming I had weaponized the public against her and caused irreparable damage to her reputation. Her lawyer requested a settlement of $2 million in damages. It made headlines again, but it backfired, because the moment the case hit public record, her HOA email logs became accessible again. And what we found, shocking, Karen had written hundreds of emails over 4 years, calling disabled children optics hazards, describing ramps as ugly scars, mocking parents of terminal kids, saying empathy is for weak leaders. The media turned. She dropped the lawsuit quietly. No apology, no retracción, just silence. Through all this, something shifted inside me too. For years, I had thought of justice as courtroom victory, a closing argument, a slammed gavel. Now I realized, true justice starts before the courtroom. In homes, in neighborhoods, in conversations. It's not just about laws, it's about awareness. So I returned to the DA's office, part-time, and I changed how we prosecuted cases involving neighborhoods, schools, or community authorities. We added mandatory ADA sensitivity training for prosecution teams. We launched a hotline for families facing local policy abuse. And slowly, steadily, the ripple began to spread. One night, I found a folded note on my pillow, written in crayon, lined paper, 5 words. I'm not afraid anymore. Hey. I wept, not because she was okay, but because she knew she was okay. 1 year after the verdict, the state, invited Amelia and me to speak at the annual Summit for Community Safety and Rights, a gathering of HOA boards, city council members, civil rights attorneys, and neighborhood advocates from across the country. I wasn't planning on going. I thought our work was local, small, focused. We didn't need a spotlight to make change. But Amelia? She looked at the invitation on the fridge, tapped her little pink pencil on the paper, and said, "If people are still listening, maybe we should talk." I smiled. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Can I wear my sparkly shoes?" Of course she could. The room was full. Over 600 attendees, most in suits, blazers, ID badges hanging from lanyards. Most were there to talk about zoning ordinances and tree trimming codes. But when the host announced, "Our next speaker is the youngest advocate in our program's history," the room leaned in. Amelia stepped up to the podium in her little navy dress, sparkly shoes blinking with every step, holding Zappy in her hand. The same device Karen had once called pool hazard. She stood on a small box to reach the microphone, adjusted it, and she spoke. My name is Amelia. When I was 5, I had a robot friend that lived on my chest. He kept my heart safe. But one day, someone took him away because they didn't like how he looked. I got really hurt, but I'm better now. And I want to say, even if someone doesn't understand your story, that doesn't make your story wrong. Rules should protect people, not hurt them. If you make rules, please think about kids like me and moms like mine. And if you ever see someone who's scared, please don't look away. That's all. Thank you. Silence. Then an eruption of applause. Not polite, not political, human. The kind that rises from the chest, the kind that reaches the corners of a room and makes grown men wipe their eyes discreetly. One board president, a former military man, stood and saluted her. Another woman whispered behind me, "That child just rewrote our policy manual with a single sentence." And she had. 2 weeks after the summit, I received a letter. No return address. Handwritten. It was from Karen. Inside, for short lines, "I watched the summit. I saw your daughter. I still don't agree. But I finally understand why you fought." I didn't respond, because it wasn't for me. It was for Amelia. And even if it didn't carry remorse, it carried something new. Recognition. At Willow Creek, the changes had stuck. The new HOA board had added empathy as a core principle. Karen's rulebook was discarded and replaced with guidelines crafted by actual families. Kids like Amelia were seen not as exceptions, but as part of the community's fabric. On weekends, Amelia rode her bike. No one stared. No one whispered. She even started drawing again her new comic series, Zappy and the Sparkle Defender. A girl with a heart robot who saved people from cold rulers who'd forgotten how to care. It was brilliant and familiar. I once thought justice was something you won. Now I know it's something you build. Slowly, patiently, stone by stone. Sometimes it starts in a courtroom. Sometimes it starts on a pool deck. Sometimes it starts with a girl in sparkly shoes and a heart too big for her age. So if you're still here, listening, maybe you've met your own Karen. Maybe you've been the parent asking for dignity or the child too afraid to ask at all. Maybe you've been silenced by rules that forgot their reason. But remember this, laws protect the body. Love protects the soul. And courage? That protects everything else. My name is Claire. My daughter is Amelia. And we don't break the rules. We rewrite them. Reflection, resolution, and a message to you. I used to believe that people like Karen were rare. A glitch in the system. An unfortunate personality you just had to ignore. But I was wrong. She wasn't rare. She was empowered. By silence. By compliance. By the quiet shrugs of neighbors who said, "It's not worth the fight." But sometimes the fight finds you. Not because you want it, but because you have someone worth protecting. For me, that someone was a 5-year-old girl with a laugh like sunshine and a machine named Zappy keeping her alive. Karen didn't steal a toy that day. She didn't enforce a policy. She snatched a lifeline. And in doing so, she showed the world exactly what unchecked HOA power mixed with arrogance and ignorance can become. But this story, Amelia's story, didn't end in tragedy. It ended in transformation. Not because of a court, not because of a law, but because of the courage to say no more, because a child stood at a podium, because a mother didn't sit down, because a community finally woke up. Now, I want to speak directly to you, the person still watching, still listening. Maybe you've been ignored. Maybe your neighborhood has a Karen. Maybe you've been gaslit into thinking your needs are too much or inconvenient. I'm here to tell you, you are not the problem. Your life, your voice, your dignity, they matter. Don't let a clipboard, a title, or a smug smile make you forget that. Whether you're a parent, a child, a caregiver, or just someone who knows something isn't right, speak up. It doesn't take a badge. It doesn't take a degree. It just takes a moment of courage. Here at HOA Denied Access, we tell stories exactly like this. Stories they try to bury beneath policy books, small print, and passive-aggressive meetings. We bring truth to the surface. We expose abuse of power. We shine light on the darkness behind the hedges and homeowners associations. So, if you felt something today, rage, grief, inspiration, don't keep it inside. Backhand index pointing down, drop a comment below. Share your experience. Movie camera subscribe to HOA Denied Access if you believe every voice deserves protection, especially the smallest ones. Hit that bell icon so you never miss another story that just might change how you see your own neighborhood. Because this isn't just entertainment. This is justice. This is accountability. This is community. And this is only the beginning.